What you're about to witness is one of the most heartbreaking stories ever told in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. When this 41-year-old homeless father walked in with a simple parking violation, nobody expected what would happen next. But when Judge Caprio asked him why he and his 3 young children were living in their van, his answer would break the judge down completely and remind us all that sometimes the most extraordinary acts of love happen in the most desperate circumstances. This isn't just another courtroom case. This is the story of a father whose world fell apart, but who refused to let his children suffer. A man who chose homelessness over separation, and whose quiet heroism would transform everyone who witnessed his truth. What he tells Judge Caprio about sacrifice, family, and the lengths a parent will go to protect their children will leave you sobbing and restore your faith in the power of unconditional love. But before we dive into this incredible revelation, less than 2% of you watching are actually subscribed. So please hit that subscribe button, because this story about parental sacrifice and the hidden struggles of families in crisis deserves to reach everyone who needs to be reminded that heroes come in all forms, including exhausted fathers doing everything they can to keep their children safe. It's a cold Thursday morning in December, and Providence Municipal Court is filled with the usual mix of people trying to resolve their legal matters and get back to their lives. The winter air carries the promise of snow, and everyone seems eager to finish their business and find somewhere warm. At 11:30 a.m., the courtroom doors open quietly, and through them walks Mike Patterson, a 41-year-old man whose appearance tells a story of recent hardship. His clothes are clean but obviously slept in. His hair is neatly combed, but his face shows the exhaustion of someone who hasn't had a good night's sleep in months. He moves with the careful, protective awareness of someone who's been living on the edge of disaster for too long. But Mike isn't alone. Following close behind him are 3 small faces that immediately capture everyone's attention. Emma, age 8, with pigtails and a backpack covered in unicorn stickers. Tyler, age 6, clutching a worn stuffed dinosaur and staying close to his father's side. And little Sophie, just 4 years old, holding on to Mike's hand with the complete trust that only small children have in their parents. The children are clean, their clothes are neat, and despite their obvious poverty, they carry themselves with dignity. But what breaks everyone's heart is the way they stay so close to their father, as if they've learned that the world can be unpredictable, and the only safe place is right beside him. Mike is here because 2 days ago, he received a citation for parking overnight in Riverside Park. The fine is $75, and on paper this should be a simple violation. Pay the fine, explain the circumstances, move on. But nothing about Mike's situation is simple. As Mike approaches the defendant stand with his 3 children staying close beside him, Judge Caprio immediately senses that this case is different. The sight of a father and 3 young children in his courtroom at 11:30 on a Thursday morning tells him that there's a story here that goes much deeper than a parking violation. Mr. Patterson, the court clerk, announces, reading from the docket. Mike steps forward, his children arranged behind him like small soldiers. His voice, when he speaks, carries the weight of profound responsibility and barely contained emotion. Yes, Your Honor, Michael Patterson. These are my children, Emma, Tyler, and Sophie. Judge Caprio looks down at the family standing before him and immediately understands that he's not just dealing with a parking violation. He's looking at a father and 3 children who are clearly in crisis. Mr. Patterson, Judge Caprio begins gently. You're charged with overnight parking in Riverside Park in violation of City Ordinance 815. The fine is $75, but before we discuss the violation, can you tell me why your children are with you in court this morning? Mike's composure begins to crack as he looks down at his 3 children, then back up at Judge Caprio. Your Honor, they're with me because I don't have anywhere else for them to be right now. Judge Caprio sets down his paperwork, his characteristic gesture when he senses someone is in genuine distress. Mike, may I call you Mike? Can you tell me about your situation? That's when Mike reveals the truth that will destroy everyone emotionally and show them what real parental love looks like. Mike's voice breaks as he begins to speak. Your Honor, we've been living in our van for 3 months, the children and I. We lost our apartment in September, and we've been staying in different places trying to find somewhere safe to sleep. The courtroom becomes very quiet. Even the court reporter stops typing to listen more carefully. Your Honor, I know parking overnight in the park is against the rules, but it's one of the few places where we can park safely, where the kids can use the bathroom facilities in the morning, where there are street lights so they feel safe at night. Judge Caprio stands up from his bench and walks closer to Mike and his children. Mike, what happened? How did you end up in this situation? Mike looks around the courtroom, then down at his children who are listening to every word. His voice becomes steadier, as if telling the truth is giving him strength. Your Honor, I was working as a construction foreman for 15 years. Good job, steady income. We had a nice apartment. The kids were in school. Everything was normal. Then in June, the company I worked for went out of business overnight. No warning, no severance, just gone. Emma, his 8-year-old daughter, reaches up and takes his hand as if sensing her father needs support. I found another job within a month, Your Honor, but it paid half what I was making before. I tried to make it work, took on extra shifts, worked weekends, but I couldn't keep up with the rent and still feed the children properly. Judge Caprio's eyes begin to fill with tears as he realizes the scope of Mike's struggle. The landlord was patient for a while, but in September, we got evicted. I had saved some money, but not enough for first month last month and security deposit on a new place. Not enough for all that and still keep the kids fed and clothed. Mike's voice grows stronger as if he's building towards something important he needs. Judge Caprio to understand. Your Honor, I had a choice to make. I could surrender the children to the state temporarily while I tried to get back on my feet. Social services said they could place them in foster care, maybe even keep them together, while I found stable housing and work. The emotional weight of this revelation hits everyone in the courtroom. This man had the option to get help but chose not to take it. But I couldn't do it, Your Honor. These children have already lost their mother 2 years ago to cancer. I couldn't make them lose their father too. Even temporarily, I couldn't let them think I was abandoning them like their world was falling apart again. Sophie, the 4-year-old, looks up at her father with complete trust and love, not fully understanding the conversation, but sensing that her daddy is explaining something important. I bought a van with what savings I had left and we've been living in it ever since. I work during the day. I found part-time construction work and I do odd jobs and the kids stay with me or at the library or the community center when it's open. And guys, if this story isn't already breaking your heart, if you're not already understanding the incredible sacrifice this father has made to keep his family together, please hit that like button. What Mike tells Judge Caprio next about the daily reality of homeless parenting will restore your faith in the power of love to overcome any obstacle. Mike continues, his voice now filled with the pride of someone who has faced impossible choices and made them with love. Your Honor, I know our situation isn't ideal. I know the children deserve better than sleeping in a van, showering at the YMCA, doing homework by streetlight, but they deserve to be together more than they deserve comfort. They deserve to know their father will never give up on them more than they deserve separate bedrooms. Tyler, the 6-year-old with the stuffed dinosaur, looks up at Judge Caprio and says in a small but clear voice, "My daddy takes good care of us. We have sleeping bags and he makes us pancakes on the camp stove." Judge Caprio has to turn away for a moment to compose himself. In 35 years on the bench, he's seen poverty, addiction, family breakdown, and every form of human struggle. But he's never seen anything like Mike Patterson's quiet heroism in the face of impossible circumstances. Mike, Judge Caprio says, his voice thick with emotion. You said you've been living in the van for 3 months. Where do the children go to school? Emma and Tyler are enrolled at Roosevelt Elementary, Your Honor. I get them there every morning at 7:30 and I pick them up every afternoon at 3:15. Sophie stays with me during the day, but she'll start prec next year. How do they do their homework? We go to the public library every afternoon. Your Honor, it's warm, it's quiet, and they have computers the kids can use. Emma helps Tyler with his reading and I help both of them with math and writing. Emma looks up proudly. I got an A on my book report last week. Judge Caprio kneels down to Emma's level. What was your book report about, sweetheart? It was about a family who went on a big adventure and had to be brave and stick together no matter what happened. The parallel to her own life isn't lost on anyone in the courtroom. Judge Caprio stands up looking at Mike with profound respect. Mike, you're telling me that despite living in a van, despite having no permanent address, despite working multiple jobs, your children are in school, doing well academically, and staying together as a family. Yes, Your Honor. It's not easy, but we make it work. We have routines. We have rules. We look out for each other. Emma helps me take care of Tyler and Sophie. Tyler shares his toys and helps carry things. Sophie brings joy to all of us, even on the hardest days. But what Judge Caprio asks next reveals something even more extraordinary about Mike's commitment to his children. Mike, what's your long-term plan? How do you get from living in a van to permanent housing? Mike's face lights up with the hope of someone who has never stopped believing in better days. Your Honor, I've been saving every penny I can. I'm up to $800 now. I need $2,400 total. First month, last month's security deposit, and moving costs for a 2-bedroom apartment at my current rate. If nothing goes wrong, if nobody gets sick, if the van doesn't break down, I should have enough by March. That's in 3 months. Mike, you're telling me you have a plan to get your family into permanent housing in 3 months? Yes, Your Honor. I've already filled out applications at 4 different apartment complexes. I have references from my current employers. I've been building my credit back up. We're going to make it, Your Honor. My children are going to have a home. What Judge Caprio does next will create one of the most memorable moments in courtroom history and prove that sometimes justice isn't about punishment. It's about recognizing heroism and helping heroes succeed. Judge Caprio looks out at the courtroom, then back at Mike and his 3 children. Mike, I want everyone in this courtroom to understand what they're witnessing. You're not here because you're a bad parent or an irresponsible citizen. You're here because you're a father who chose love over comfort, family unity over individual welfare, and hope over despair. The judge's voice grows stronger, more emotional. You could have taken the easy way out. You could have let the state take care of your children while you rebuilt your life. Instead, you chose the hardest possible path, keeping your family together no matter the cost to yourself. Judge Caprio turns to address the entire courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at heroism in its purest form. This man works multiple jobs, maintains his children's education, keeps them clean and fed and loved, all while living in a van and saving every penny for their future. But what Judge Caprio announces next will shock everyone and change Mike's family's life forever. Mike, not only am I dismissing this parking violation completely, but I'm making an emergency judicial referral to the Providence Housing Authority for immediate family assistance. Mike's eyes widen in shock and hope. Furthermore, I'm directing court administration to establish the Patterson Family Emergency Fund. I'm personally contributing $4,000 to start it. And I'm asking this community to help a father who has shown us what real love looks like. The courtroom erupts in applause, but Judge Caprio isn't finished. Mike, you said you need $2,400 by March. Consider it done. This community is going to make sure you and your children have a home by Christmas. Emma, Tyler, and Sophie look up at their father with amazement, not fully understanding the details, but knowing something wonderful has just happened. Mike's voice is barely a whisper. Your Honor, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Mike. You've already said everything that matters. You've shown us that being a good parent isn't about what you can provide materially. It's about what you're willing to sacrifice emotionally. You've kept your family together through love, determination, and sheer force of will. Judge Caprio kneels down to speak to the children directly. Emma, Tyler, Sophie, your daddy is a hero. He's shown me today what it means to love someone more than yourself. What happened after this video was posted online restored faith in humanity and proved that communities can come together to help families in crisis when they see real need and genuine love. Within 6 hours of the video being shared, the Patterson Family Emergency Fund had received over $15,000 in donations from around the world. Local businesses reached out to offer Mike full-time employment with benefits. 3 different apartment complexes waived their usual requirements and offered the family immediate housing. But perhaps most importantly, the Providence Department of Children and Families reviewed Mike's case and officially commended his parenting, noting that his children were thriving despite their circumstances and recommending him as an example of resilient parenting in crisis situations. 2 weeks later, Mike and his children moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood with good schools. Emma, Tyler, and Sophie each had their own rooms for the first time in months, but they still chose to sleep together in Mike's room for the first few weeks, having grown so close during their time in the van. 6 months later, Mike returned to Judge Caprio's courtroom, not as a defendant, but as an honored guest for the court's annual Community Heroes Recognition ceremony. Emma, Tyler, and Sophie were with him, dressed up and beaming with pride. Your Honor, Mike told Judge Caprio that day, you didn't just dismiss a parking ticket that day. You reminded me that being a good father isn't about the size of the home I provide. It's about the size of the love I give. You showed my children that there are people in this world who will help families that are trying to help themselves. Judge Caprio's response was simple but profound. Mike, you didn't need me to teach you about love. You've been living it every day for months. All we did was make sure the world could see what real parental heroism looks like. The Patterson family story became a catalyst for change in Providence's approach to family homelessness. The city created new policies allowing overnight parking in designated areas for families in crisis, established emergency family housing vouchers, and developed partnerships between the courts and social services to identify and help families before they become separated. And guys, I want to ask you something that I know both Judge Caprio and Mike would want me to ask. In the comments below, tell us about the parents in your life who made sacrifices you didn't understand at the time. Who are the mothers and fathers who chose your welfare over their comfort, your future over their present? Because Mike Patterson's story proves that being a parent isn't about providing everything your children want. It's about ensuring they have everything they need to know they're loved, protected, and valued. Sometimes the greatest gift a parent can give isn't a perfect life, but the knowledge that they'll never give up fighting for their children's happiness. If this story moved you, if Mikey's sacrifice for Emma, Tyler, and Sophie, and Judge Caprio's compassionate response touched your heart, please share this video with every parent, every family member, and everyone who needs to be reminded that love can overcome any obstacle when we refuse to give up on the people who matter most. Subscribe for more stories that prove the power of family love, parental sacrifice, and community support to transform lives and restore hope in even the darkest circumstances. And remember Judge Caprio's wisdom. Heroism isn't always dramatic or obvious. Sometimes it's a father choosing to sleep in a van so his children don't have to sleep apart. Sometimes it's working multiple jobs while maintaining bedtime stories. Sometimes it's believing in better days when everything around you suggests they'll never come. Mike Patterson taught us that being homeless doesn't mean being hopeless, that having nothing doesn't mean giving nothing, and that the measure of a parent's success isn't the size of their house. It's the strength of their children's trust in their love. His story reminds us all that family isn't about where you live. It's about who you'd live anywhere for, and who would live anywhere to stay with within hours of that hearing. The story of Michael Patterson and his 3 children began to ripple beyond the walls of the Providence courtroom. Someone in attendance that morning, a local journalist covering community cases, had recorded the exchange, capturing every tender moment, every pause in Mike's trembling voice, and the compassion radiating from Judge Caprio's bench. When the clip was posted online later that afternoon, it began spreading at a rate no one anticipated. Within 6 hours, it had reached hundreds of thousands of viewers. By the end of the day, it was everywhere, on social media, in news feeds, even on national television. The comments poured in by the thousands. People wrote from across the country, parents, veterans, single mothers, and working-class families who saw their own struggles reflected in Mike's eyes. Some shared stories of when they too had lived out of cars or shelters, of moments when kindness from a stranger changed everything. Others simply wrote messages of love and prayers for Mike and his children. It was as if the world had been waiting for a reminder that goodness still existed, that real love could still break through the hardness of modern life. By midnight, the Patterson Family Emergency Fund that Judge Caprio had started had grown from his initial $4,000 contribution to over $15,000. Donations came from everywhere. Small amounts from students, large gifts from business owners, anonymous transfers from people who simply wrote notes like, "For the pancakes," or, "From one parent to another, stay strong." The next morning, Mike awoke in the van as sunlight filtered through the windshield. His children were still asleep, curled together beneath a pile of blankets. He turned on his old phone and saw it flooded with notifications, missed calls, texts, and hundreds of messages from people he'd never met. A reporter had somehow tracked down his temporary email address through the courthouse records. At first, he thought it was a scam. Then he saw a message from the court's administrative office confirming everything. Judge Caprio himself had reached out. The email read, "Mike, this community saw your strength and responded. Come to the courthouse this morning. There's something we need to discuss." He read the message 3 times before it sank in. He gently woke the children, helped them dress, and drove to the courthouse. The van, though worn and dented, felt different that morning, lighter somehow, filled with the warmth of possibility. When he arrived, the same court officers who had watched his hearing greeted him like an old friend. They smiled, shook his hand, and helped carry in the kids' backpacks. The receptionist at the front desk offered the children cocoa and cookies while they waited. Then Judge Caprio appeared, not in his robe this time, but in a simple gray sweater and overcoat. He crossed the lobby and embraced Mike like a father greeting his son. "Mike," he said with genuine warmth, "I told you people would see what kind of man you are. They didn't just see your struggle. They saw your heart." Mike's voice was quiet. "Your Honor, I don't know how to thank you. You've already done more than I could ever ask for." The judge smiled. "You can thank me by letting us help you finish what you started." He led the Patterson family into his office, where representatives from the Providence Housing Authority and 2 local charities were waiting. They explained that enough money had been raised not only to secure housing but to furnish it, cover utilities, and provide groceries for the first several months. They had already located an available 3-bedroom apartment near Roosevelt Elementary, less than a mile from the school. Mike's eyes filled with tears. He pressed his hand over his mouth, trying to hold them back, but couldn't. Emma climbed into his lap and hugged him tightly, whispering, "Daddy, we have a home again." "Yes, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice shaking. "We do." That afternoon, court staff accompanied them to sign the lease. The landlord, having seen the story online, waived the security deposit entirely. Volunteers from a local church and several businesses showed up with furniture, blankets, toys, and groceries. When the children entered their new apartment for the first time, they froze at the sight. Real beds, clean walls, a kitchen that smelled of new paint and hope. Sophie ran from room to room, laughing as she discovered the light switches. Tyler stood in awe at the small bookshelf filled with storybooks someone had donated. Emma walked slowly to the window, looking out at the city, and whispered, "We're home." That night, for the first time in months, Mike tucked his children into warm beds. He stood quietly in the doorway watching them sleep, the soft hum of the radiator filling the silence. He whispered a small prayer, not of request but of gratitude, for the judge, for the strangers, for the strength that had carried him this far. The story, however, didn't end there. The kindness that had begun in that courtroom continued to spread. Local businesses offered Mike full-time work. One construction company owner, himself a father of 3, offered Mike a foreman position with benefits and paid training. Others donated gift cards, clothes, and even a used minivan so the family could retire their old one. The city took notice too. The mayor's office released a statement praising both Mike's perseverance and Judge Caprio's compassion, calling the case a shining example of community justice in action. Social services reviewed Mike's file and officially commended his parenting, describing his dedication as a model of resilience and moral strength. Over the next few weeks, Mike's children began to thrive. Emma joined the school's reading club and started tutoring younger kids. Tyler made friends quickly, proudly bringing his stuffed dinosaur for show and tell, where he told the story of the van adventure. Sophie began preschool, always talking about her pancake Sundays, which the family continued even in their new kitchen. By spring, Mike had saved enough to repay the kindness that had helped him. He donated part of his first full paycheck to the Patterson Family Fund, which by then had evolved into an official charitable program managed by the court. It helped other struggling parents pay fines, secure housing, or buy groceries. When June arrived exactly 1 year after he'd lost his original job, Mike was invited back to Judge Caprio's courtroom, not as a defendant but as a guest of honor. The courthouse was full again, but this time the air was light, filled with applause and smiles. Judge Caprio, standing at his bench, addressed the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, 1 year ago, a man stood before this court with his 3 children. He had nothing but a van, a dream, and an unbreakable will to protect his family. Today he stands before us employed, housed, and thriving. But more importantly, he stands as proof that love, even in the hardest of circumstances, can rewrite destiny." Mike stepped forward, his children holding hands beside him. He was dressed in clean work clothes, his face brighter, his eyes full of quiet pride. When he spoke, his voice carried the same humility as that first day. "Your Honor," he said, "you didn't just dismiss a ticket that day. You restored my faith in people. You reminded me that even when life takes everything, love still gives us enough to rebuild. My kids learned that day that the world still has kindness in it, that there are people who care." Judge Caprio smiled. "Mike, you didn't need me to teach you love. You've been living it every day. All I did was make sure people saw it." The crowd rose to their feet in applause. Emma hugged her father tightly, and for a moment the courtroom that had once witnessed despair now stood as a place of redemption and community. In the months that followed, the Patterson case became the catalyst for real change in Providence. The city council implemented new policies allowing temporary overnight parking for families in crisis. Local shelters established family-specific programs. Courts across the state began collaborating directly with social services to ensure families in hardship were guided toward help rather than punished for survival. Reporters occasionally checked in on Mike and his children. Each time, they found them stronger, happier, and more united than ever. Mike continued to work construction, often volunteering his weekends to help repair shelters and community housing units. When asked why, he simply said, "Because someone helped me when I needed it most. I owe the world that same kindness." And Emma, now 9, began writing short essays about her family's experience. One of them, titled "The Van That Became Our Home," won a statewide writing award. Tyler joined a youth soccer league and insisted his team be named the Pancake Heroes. Sophie, always smiling, told her preschool teacher that her daddy was a superhero because he saved us without flying. 2 years later, at another community ceremony, Mike took the stage beside Judge Caprio once more. The Patterson Family Fund had since helped over 70 local families find housing and stability. The program had expanded statewide. When Mike spoke, his words were simple but powerful. "Being a good parent isn't about having everything. It's about never giving up. My kids didn't need a big house. They needed to know I'd fight for them no matter what. That's what love is. It's the promise that you'll keep going even when you have nothing left but each other." The audience was silent, then erupted into applause that seemed to last forever. And that, perhaps, is the true legacy of that cold December morning. A reminder that heroism doesn't always wear a uniform or carry a title. Sometimes it looks like a tired father sleeping in a van so his children don't have to sleep apart. Sometimes it sounds like the soft voice of a child saying, "My daddy takes good care of us." Sometimes it's a judge choosing compassion over punishment. Mike Patterson's story continues to echo far beyond Providence. It's taught thousands that love isn't measured in possessions but in perseverance, that the strength of a family is not in what they own, but in how they hold on to each other when the world lets go. Even now, when people rewatch that courtroom video, they still cry, not because of sadness, but because of the overwhelming beauty of human resilience. They see a man who refused to let poverty define him, a father who turned hardship into hope, and a community that proved the world can still come together when it chooses empathy over judgment. In the end, Mike's story isn't just about homelessness or hardship. It's about the power of love to keep the lights of humanity burning, even when everything else grows dark. And somewhere in Providence, on quiet Sunday mornings, the smell of pancakes still fills a small apartment kitchen where a father and his 3 children sit together, smiling, laughing, and remembering that sometimes the greatest miracles begin with a parking ticket.